Hello, hello. How's it going?
Hello.
Long time no talk to.
Excited
Okay,
to
so
be here.
yeah. Oh, I'm really excited, guys. Let me put on my camera here. Okay, hello, everyone. Happy you guys were able to make it. Troy, do you think you can see if we can get Anthony in here? I'm hoping he's in. Let me just shake a look.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. He's made it. Awesome.
There.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Man of the hour.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, let me share my screen and then we'll go over the presentation, guys, and we'll get started really soon.
There we go. Okay.
So let's do sharing.
P.S. If you wanted me to share, I don't know why you'd want this, but if you wanted me to share my face at all, you got to turn that on because it says that.
Oh,
you
I
have
do?
it turned off. Yeah.
Okay, let me.
There's an unveiling process here.
I wouldn't want to if I were you. I'm just saying. I don't know if that was intentional.
Let me see. Allow recording. Allow pin. So.
And while you're doing that, Tyler, I'm just gonna say hello to everyone that is coming in. It's great to see all the names, and would of course love to see your faces. But great to see everybody coming in, joining us. If you can, we'll be keeping a very close eye in the chat. Let me know that you can. Maybe I should wait until we can see Anthony.
I think you should be able to enable it now. I made you a co-host.
Yay!
There he is.
There he is. Awesome.
There
Cool.
he is.
Here.
Great.
Anyway. Okay.
You guys all look great. Sound great. If in the comments, if you could just maybe drop us a 1, just let us know that you can hear, see everybody as we get everything lined up for today.
Mm-hmm.
That would be awesome. I'm seeing 1s. I'm seeing some 1s coming in.
Nice. Cool.
Terry, Ivy. Awesome. Jake.
Perfect.
Cool. Anthony's
right.
looking good. See, I didn't know. It took exactly 3 minutes, and somebody has already acknowledged how great you look, Anthony.
Awesome.
That's just silly, but thank you. Anyway.
All right. I suppose we should probably get started. Okay. So the kind of main topic that we're going to be discussing is Amazon SEO kind of explained, and we're going to be going over kind of all the different signals that's out there. Obviously, as a disclaimer, we don't work on Amazon's A9 algorithm, so we don't know everything. And that's why we kind of brought in Anthony, because he knows significant amount more than myself, just because he's got a lot of internal documents and leaked information that's going to be really cool to hear about. So just keep in mind that, like, obviously we don't know everything about A9. We have some really good information about it, but again, we're not like there seeing what it looks like and how it actually functions, quote unquote, perfectly. And it's always ever changing. So like something that may be relevant today might not necessarily be that relevant, a year from now. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so the next kind of topic is, if you guys do have any kind of questions, let us kind of know. We'll try to answer it as much as we can. So we're just going to go over the rules here. These usually last about an hour long, roughly speaking. Usually it's a little bit over, but hopefully we can kind of keep it in that range. And if we do unmute anybody, which I don't think it'll be happening, but just keep any kind of sensitive information to yourself, even if you're communicating in the chat. Also keep that in mind that you don't want to be sharing any kind of sensitive information, just so that way you're keeping yourself kind of anonymous, if you will. And this will be recorded. And again, anybody that wasn't able to make this kind of presentation, you could obviously, check out the recording. We will have that most likely on the YouTube channel at some point. Okay. Any kind of questions you guys see that may have came in? Would you be touching on A10's algorithm?
Is this a joke? Is this somebody? Is somebody messing with us right now?
It's so funny that somebody mentions that. Somebody had asked me that literally today about A10. Have you seen? Which is not a new question or statement, but I was thinking about posting that, of like, what are the words or things that you hear where you sort of know maybe somebody's been a little bit misguided, or some of the misinformation that's out there. And so that could be a good point to kind of riff off of too, since we have Anthony here, which too, I want to say before we dive into the meat of the topic, when Tyler has touched on, kind of disclaimed, we don't work for A9 or Amazon. A9 is a subsidiary of Amazon. So hence, that's why you never hear A10. It's like Apple calling themselves Apple II. It just doesn't happen. And so Anthony, as an expert, is somebody that we have. I know I have Seller Tools team when he's drafted articles, researched this topic, and is intimately aware of a lot of these factors. Definitely honored to have him on today to discuss this in depth. As again, somebody who's kind of I've studied what he studied, and this is a big part of I think people that obsess over Amazon SEO ranking, how to get on page one, those important factors, and I think. Hopefully you'd agree, Anthony, you just have to constantly be a student of this topic. You don't really have a choice.
Yep. It's a moving target. It's like learning how to shoot arrows from horseback. Like, you have to stay on it all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
Horseback
absolutely.
riding. All right. I didn't know that's what we're learning today.
Right? Teaching you how to be a samurai.
Mhm. So I think just to answer the question kind of briefly is there really isn't such a thing as A10. That's just kind of like a misconception kind of in the space. The reason why it's called A9 is actually because Amazon, they literally named it, I think 9 letters after. It's called algorithm, but they just said A9 because they said there's 9 other kind of characters after it. So they algorithm. So it's a neat little thing for them that's how they got their name, and that's how their internal team did it. As far as I'm aware, maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's from my understanding, that's why they named it A9. So you guys want to confirm or maybe rebuttal me on that, or is that
No,
something?
I'm pretty sure you're correct on that. But I do know the part that I am fairly confident about is that A10 isn't a thing. I think I was there when Troy, I mean, you were around then too, so you might remember when that like became a thing. There was somebody on LinkedIn who created this video or series of videos, basically making content all about how PPC doesn't rank and it's actually devaluing your product so that Amazon can keep taking your PPC dollars. And he attributed this change to the way the algorithm works in PPC to the algorithm update, which was A10. All of this completely fabricated, but a lot of people believed him. And so, the rest of us had to come in there and be like, no, this is absolutely no, 100% no. It's an interesting time. It's a couple of years ago.
Yeah. I faintly remember it because I feel like it's often deja vu. It sort of has a annual cyclical feel where we see. I guess I should make it the point from my observation is that the algorithm absolutely does change. We do see factors changing, but to assign it a name and say, oh, well, now it's this. And then we also, like I said, A9, it's literally, if you run a Google search, you'll see it's a subsidiary.
It's actually a forbidden little site if you actually run it right now. They used to redirect you, but now it's like a little forbidden.
Yeah. So it's a name that we're giving or somebody's giving, and then there are associating factors that they see, and it's usually anecdotal insights. It's not usually statistically relevant. And if it is, it's just a change in the algorithm. It's not something that we stamp and say, well, let's give it this arbitrary name, and then we, try to associate different factors that inform it. So but yeah, I know Anthony and I, and probably Tyler, you too, have seen our fair share of people try to grapple with it. That's our challenge at the same time too, is to understand it.
I think the big reason why they went to like, A9, A10 is because they probably thought like, oh, it probably started A1, A2, A3. And then, the next iteration would be A10 because it's, but it's obviously doesn't work like that.
I think it was more of like a marketing tool to signify a huge change in the algorithm. Yeah, that is the thing that I take issue with, because very rarely, so in my experience, others, mileage may vary, but in my experience, it feels like shifts in the algorithm are more like evolution. It's very slow. And I actually have seen in these, documents that you mentioned, like their internal process for testing things. It's not like overnight switch rollout everywhere. Like literally they take branches, they work on it, they test it, they make sure it works in a subset of a category, then they go to the whole category, then they move. And like, it's such a slow rollout. So what we'll see is kind of stuff that happens that we never actually see. So rarely is it like a night and day change. I think the only time that happens is when they literally change like the I guess platform or the way the machine algorithm operates as a whole. So when people make statements like that, I think it's mostly just clickbait, right? Like, oh, the A10, the big shift. It's like, just because your product suddenly isn't ranking after you ran like 4 months worth of rebates does not mean that there's a big shift in the algorithm like that. But that's usually how it plays out.
Yeah.
Okay. So another question we're getting here is, can you tell us how to get organic rank for keywords? So are we going to be going over that? And I'll say just yes. I don't know if you guys will want to add to that answer as well.
I mean, I think, Tyler, that's a great way to dive into. We've got a lot to unpack because we're sort of, and again, the person who posed the question, I don't mean to bash the A10 question at all. It's great to pose those questions too. That's what when I want to learn from experts, there's no bad question, right? Because you're going to people that have obsessed and stress tested and verified. So again, I apologize for, if there's any any feelings that there is a bad question, because there's no such thing. So, but Tyler, I think that takes us into kind of the meat of what we've got ready to unpack in terms of SEO, because ranking for organic keywords, ranking organically is the top of the mountain. That's when you're leveraging Amazon completely.
It's literally the purpose. This is why we do SEO, right? Like, this is what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one last question, and then we can kind of get into it. I usually like to answer all the questions and then get into the meat of things. Okay, so the last question here is using all keywords and in A+ content versus using phrase match or key phrase match. So I can kind of go a little bit, and then you guys can give your kind of iteration here. So essentially, putting all your keywords in the A+ content, I don't think will give you, like, it'll obviously help. I'm not going to pretend it's not, but you're going to want to put your most relevant keywords kind of in the title, make sure they're in the bullet points, and then your A+ content. Obviously, they do scrape that and see that, and it's like, oh, these are relevant for this said keywords. So I think it's a good thing, but you probably want them in phrase match if it's very important, but you can't do it for every single search term. It just doesn't make sense to have, like, because at that point it's not readable. You need to have like the balance of making it so it's very SEO friendly, meaning like it's search engine optimization, but it's also readable to humans, because at the end of it, that's who's reading these things. So you want to balance to make it so it makes sense, but it's also as much as you can on the optimization side of things. So I'll let you guys answer that one as well.
In my experience, I feel like everything with regard to indexing and ranking a listing is I don't know what other word to use, but blended, right? And what I mean by blended is, outside of the title, I'm not convinced that there are areas in the listing that like have more rank weight. I don't think that position, and I know that tests have been done on this, like subject matter area versus search terms, but the results are never consistent, right? It's always like, well, sometimes it's this and sometimes it's that. Really, what I believe we're seeing is that every part of the listing is indexed. And then relevance weight goes to the title. So with that being said, what you're actually experiencing when you place these keywords in different portions of your listing is like where the visibility picks up, because portions of your listing are going to be indexed by Google. And you never know, like, these products do end up on Google at places at times. And you never know when that particular place and time is going to bring traffic that converts. Portions of the listing show up when you share that on social media, and sometimes that's going to happen. So what you're actually seeing is a fluctuation of how humans interact with the different places that they see these keywords and your listing pop up. And the reason why it's important to keep phrases intact in the title is, particularly during the cold start period, otherwise known as the honeymoon period, the Amazon's algorithm doesn't have enough data to stitch together relevance yet for all of the keywords that you'd be relevant for. So your most important search phrase being intact kind of sets it in the right direction during that data gathering period. And the title, just like an H1 tag on any website in existence, is the highest relevance, because this is the text portion of the, you got the image and you have the text portion that tells everybody what that image is. And that's why there's more relevance weight there. That's why the intact phrasing is important there. But everywhere else, it's just a matter of like, will this particular order of words spark an engagement by a human that might end up encountering it somewhere in the wild.
Okay, that was a long question,
Great.
a long answer. That was a good one though. Do you want to add to that, Troy? Or
I have a slightly different opinion, just very slight, but I think I might hold on to it till we get to that portion in the slide, because you've got great visuals here to represent this too.
Okay.
And I'd like to kind of riff on that with Anthony when we cover it.
Okay, sounds good. All right, guys, I'm gonna kind of get into it. I know I see a couple other questions. We will answer these questions. I want to try to get through as much of this as we can. I try to be somewhat in a timely manner. Okay, guys, so this is essentially kind of our infographic, our SEO infographic, and essentially it's 3 circles. And I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I've been always kind of wanting to do some type of infographic like this, where when you think of Amazon SEO, a lot of people just think the on-page optimization. They don't really think about the other aspects. Like they kind of might have them in mind, but they don't have it maybe in a visual representation like this, where for me anyways, SEO means like it's kind of all of these things. And they can be kind of divided into 3 kind of topics, which is your on page, your off page, and then the user interactions, right? So that's kind of what encompasses Amazon SEO. So your on page includes anything that's kind of on the detail page, right? You got your titles, images, bullet points, A+ content, description, all that stuff. Off page is kind of anywhere that you're kind of basically driving kind of that traffic to your on page. So this could kind of include things like, I mean, this could be also inventory related and like geo ranking, because that is kind of a thing. And we will talk about that at some point. Backlinks, making sure you're driving that traffic, paid traffic coming from places like Google, organic traffic, places from like Google. Again, Google is one of the bigger ones just because they have the highest domain authority out there. And then the user interaction piece, which is another really, really big piece that Amazon's looking at for like the actual signal part. And this is like things like your conversion rate, your average order value, your sessions, your add to carts, your click-through rate, the impressions, all that good stuff. So that they're looking at a whole bunch of them. There's probably a lot more than this. Like the list could be way huger. But obviously, I wanted to just show kind of the main ones that I think are the most relevant here. So again, this is kind of the visual representation, and we will be going over this in the next couple slides. This is just to really give you a good understanding of like what Amazon SEO really is. And then to kind of put it into your own little category of like, oh, if you're making a listing, that's your on-page stuff. So if you want to focus on on-page stuff, you need to find tools that could help you, do keyword research. Maybe you want to split test your images, or maybe you want to, do all kinds of variable testing on that regards. And then if you're more off-page, you want to focus on, let's say, ranking on Google or something like that, then that would be more off-page SEO, where it's not technically related to your on-page. Obviously, there is an element of like, if your on page is really, really bad and the keywords aren't optimized well, then it's very difficult to rank on like another platform like, or another search engine like Google, because it's just not going to be able to find your listing as relevant for those particular search terms. So do you guys want to kind of maybe touch on this kind of infographic, or do you guys just want to jump into the other graphics that we have?
I was just going to say, this is a great visual representation and kind of summary of how it all works. The only thing I would add to the off-page stuff is, aside from with poorly optimized listings, aside from trouble by other search engines assigning relevance, also you'll find trouble indexing at all, because you're like, Amazon tries to index everything that's on its platform. Google doesn't necessarily try to index everything that's on Amazon's platform. So if you have a poorly optimized listing, you might also like run into difficulty getting Google to index that page for certain keywords, aside from also it finding it relevant or not.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good point. How about you, Troy? You want to add anything to this kind of infographic?
I think it's a great macro view, because I think this sort of informs some of the strategy, right? And then you start to look at what each one of these sections are for how you tactically, like what you specifically do. And I know we'll break this down, but I think this gives that good high level view. The user interactions, it's, since it's a third of this equation, and obviously there's overlap, is where there's often, I think, the most confusion and the lack of implementation, where sellers maybe just think, and again, I sort of have a different opinion when it comes to conversion rate. When we've seen when you drive a abundance of traffic, whether that's artificial or real traffic, it's not always the sign that you convert or realize a sale that can impact your rank. And by that, I mean, if I give a very specific example, there was a time where sending botted traffic, which is artificial traffic, that's kind of what it's coined as in the industry, is that it would artificially show to Amazon there's a bunch of buyer intent behind a specific keyword for a product, but these bots wouldn't buy the product. They would just go through the action of viewing a detail page and then adding to cart. So what that emphasizes is those other user interactions were sort of being gamed and having an impact on rank, where conversion rate was actually abysmal, because you're sending thousands of bots effectively, or actions via bots through a listing, and then that conversion rate is tanking. So you're getting all this traffic and you're getting little to no conversions, but you're using it for a rank benefit. So it was a immensely black hat strategy, but it informed how we could sort of view user interactions and know that, well, maybe conversion rate is a little bit overstated sometimes, but then it also emphasizes, well, if that's also the case, and it doesn't have to be necessarily mutually exclusive, well, maybe add to carts are weighed more heavily. Add to carts relative to your competitors' add to carts. I think those are usually where there's the most, probably just general lack of information. I think I like to really geek out on it because it's really interesting, right? Page or user interactions, I think, is where the algorithm gets to be a little bit like, how can you think like Amazon? If you were Amazon, what would you reward? Where we just know, the SEO on, off, external traffic, earning sales, rewarding sales, what gives you the most relevant results. So without riffing too far on that, I think that third is probably where there's probably not an abundance of information, and some of it is not to the depth, I think, that could really help brand owners think about, okay, well, how could I use this reality and run different strategies?
Mm-hmm. That actually reminds me of something I remember seeing in one of Anthony's videos. He did some type of billboard ads, and then he was like driving that traffic technically to his listing, but there wasn't a direct link because it was like on a billboard. I think you could touch on that just a little bit, and then we can go to the next slide if you would like.
Yes, I ran billboard ads, digital billboard ads, because digital billboards are actually very inexpensive. It was nuts. And I was making sales. It was coupon sales. I had created a short link that was like super easy to understand from the billboard that people could go to, that went straight to the listing from there. And the coupon code was right there on the billboard. People actually bought it. I was completely shocked that worked, but it did.
Yeah.
Those are always the funnest tests, right?
Yeah, and that's like a really good way of like really trying to gamify that user interaction. Like you're basically driving external traffic, which is kind of on the off-page SEO stuff, and then you're making it so they have to kind of find your listing. They're in a way doing a search, find, buy, because they can't just click a link from a billboard, because you know what I mean. But in a way, it was just a very easy way for them to find.
There are tons of ways to test that too, like not just sending them to a short link, but I wanted to try SMS short code in the future. Like there's just, it's wild. People like deals, and wherever they can find them, you can usually get them to do cool stuff to get it.
Okay, awesome. All right, so guys, we're going to go into the on-page stuff. So we're going to really kind of dive into all the, maybe not every single aspect, but we're going to dive into the big ones. So I think title is definitely kind of one of the most important pieces, because not only is this, one of the things that Amazon really looks for in terms of, indexing. Anthony brought up a good point with H1 tags. And for most people that aren't like, web dev or web coders or anything like that, H1 is just like kind of the most important. It's like your title. And that's kind of what these search engines look at. So usually you have about 200 characters at max. Maybe that'll change in the future. I like to usually do 80 to 20 characters, because like when you do it from a Google search, that's how many kind of characters you see, and it's like the kind of the blue little link you can click, and then you get brought to the detail page. And I believe that's like the sweet spot for kind of Google indexing. Well, not indexing, but Google optimization, right? You don't want to do just like a crazy title. And I do believe it also helps the kind of customers read the title. If they see that it's like 300 characters, or in this case 200 characters long, it becomes very unreadable. So most of them will probably just like maybe read the first couple words. But if it's like something reasonable, like, 80 characters long, they could probably read through a good portion of it. And I believe anyways, it helps them kind of see it and they're like, oh, you know what, this is neat. And then they'll click through that. What is your guys kind of take on kind of the title, the importance? Should you have the most important keywords right away, or do you want to put your brand right there? Like, what do you guys think in terms of the kind of title? It's a big one.
And first off, before we get into that, I just want to say, once upon a time, for anybody that hasn't been in this game since 2014, there used to be a 500 character limit. Buddy, were those titles ugly. They were atrocious, dude. Like, it was nuts going through Amazon back in those days, in those like little subsets where all of the third-party sellers like attacked a product category. Oh man, you would just be like, it was awful. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that's why Amazon enforced some of the rules they did. They have the style guide, and every style guide basically says, hey, your title should be under 80 characters. And everybody's like, but I can't say anything about my product in that case. So then they put it to 200. My philosophy is, I think it's very important to get your most relevant, most important phrase as like the first words on your title, for the purpose of SEO in Amazon as well as off Amazon. It truncates too when you look at the website through the mobile site. So you want to make sure that those first 80 to 120 characters are, that have that phrase. Add a benefit in there if you can fit it, if it's capable of just kind of give people the idea of like what they can expect to get out of whatever that phrase that explains your product is. I do think that it's okay to use up the rest of the space though, just because it will truncate. Google will truncate it. Amazon will truncate it. So it's not that just because it's too long, it won't index. And then you can use that extra space, just to kind of help the spiders with some extra words. But at the same time, you don't want it to be keyword stuffed. So it's just usually I do like a really succinct, probably on average between 150 to 180 characters of just like, this is what the product is, and this is the applications. If it ends up shorter, that's fine. A rule of thumb for copywriting is never use more words to say what you need to say, like use as few as possible. And if you can get it succinctly done in less words, then that's fine. And if it takes you all 200 characters, don't fret if you have a really complex product and that's what it needs. That's my philosophy anyway.
Yeah. And I think Anthony brings up good points too, in terms of truncating too for mobile, thinking about mobile experience, think about search results, price, title, reviews, main image. There's only a handful of things that are displayed. It's part of search results. So being mindful of what you're leading with. I'm of the philosophy too that higher or more heavily weighted keywords on the front end is more ideal. Obviously, if you follow style guidelines, I do remember those 500 character days. But then also, one of the big topics is incorporating brand name within the title too. So if you can, and think about how you can potentially have an optimized or short but safe title, brand, you can use that in the title as well. But I tend to, in that spectrum of, sort of dialed in and succinct versus sort of more, let's say, built out or using as much real estate as possible, I skew a little bit more on using more of that real estate. But your titles, it's really important. And this is where, for me, kind of an easy shorthand or way to think about it is, this is the most relevant section that Amazon gives you to identify what your product is. And it's an imperfect shorthand, but this sort of works, of thinking about how much space does Amazon give you in each listing section. And as it gets smaller and smaller, they want you to provide the most relevant keywords or keyword phrases. And so the title, of course, we know there's only just so much that we have to work with. Sort of think about that as you're building out your list. When you get down to Aplus and EBC, or even your description, you have all of these character counts to work with, and you can mention accessories. You can use multi-language, also known as, all those keywords that are still relevant, and the data is there to back it up. You can start to incorporate those a little bit further down. But meaningful, still conversion ready keywords are really important in that title.
Okay. So do you guys think you should be putting like phrase match stuff, or just like it doesn't really matter in terms of like the organization of these keywords? So like, let's say your main keyword was like red apple. It doesn't matter if it's in sync or it's like you're red and then talk about something else and then apple comes up afterwards. You guys think it's important to have it in phrase? I know that I know the answer, but I just want you guys to give your take. But make it
the answer.
Quick. I mean,
we get to guess.
What do you guys think? Just something very short, and then we'll go on to the kind of branded in the title, and then we'll jump on to the next topic after that.
Something very short. Yes.
Okay.
That's short, right?
Yeah,
Look,
that's short.
In the future, like after the listings aged, it probably doesn't matter as much, but testing has shown in many cases that during those first periods of the cold start, Amazon takes time over time to like stitch together phrases. But if you already have it intact, it doesn't have to take the time to stitch it together. You might actually not show as relevant for a very important phrase if you launch tomorrow, your listing goes live tomorrow, and that phrase is not intact. It might take some time for Amazon to go, oh yeah, here's this phrase. And that's the reason why for your most important keyword phrases, like you should keep them intact in your title, because that jump starts the process.
Right,
yeah, I agree completely with that. Yeah, and I mean, when in doubt, title again, the phrase we lean on a little bit more, but pretty much everywhere else in your listing, the decisions and the data, you essentially want to reinforce. And I bring it up because I also see a question here about brand analytics versus, let's say, any tool. Brand analytics is the cream of the crop in the same way that organic keyword rank is ultimately our goal for selling on Amazon. Brand analytics is it's so far and above and beyond any other resource for data, because it's true Amazon data. I can't stress it enough. And I've seen the question quite a bit. So I'm hoping there's really great information out there to reinforce that. It's a big reason why we try to use it liberally. But the data really should drive, when in doubt, lean on the data to really inform how you're using some of those, prioritizing keywords and finding the relevant keywords.
Okay, fair enough. All right, do you guys think that we should have the brand name inside the start of the title, or should it not be there at all? Like, I know that's a good question. I feel like even I sometimes think, I'm like, for me, I personally don't think you should put the brand right at the start. I've seen some really good kind of creative people where they'll be like, they'll have the most relevant terms that describe the product very well, and then they'll be like buy and then brand name, right? And I think that's a good way to actually include the brand name, but not have the most important real estate right at the start. What is your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I wouldn't put it at the start either, but I think this is a psychology play. Essentially, let's say you have a brand name that in the brand name tells exactly what it is, the solutions that your brand provides. And let's say that you have a plan to release new products like every 2 months, right? So you're building out a catalog. For you, brand recognition might be important, in which case then having the brand name farther up is more important, because it's a psychology play. You're trying to always be in front of the browsing customers, and your brand name isn't, in this particular example, your brand name isn't obscure, so people can know like immediately, pet tools for pups brand, right? Like, and Pet Tools for Pups is going to come out with 100 new products over the course of the next 2 years. It might be important for everybody to get used to that name, and you might put that really close to the top. I personally don't usually play it that way, so mine goes to the end of the title, if at all, which I don't always think that it's important either. Like if you're like, your brand name is a name that nobody's ever going to recognize, and it's like your first product ever, and you don't even know if you'll continue with it, then it's like, unless Amazon makes you, like, what does that need to be in your title for?
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. For me, it's mostly at the end. When we're working with brands that are building a lot, the bigger brands, they've got a lot of brand equity, brand loyalty. Usually it's kind of a curve of like, encouraging them to incorporate that just so they meet style guidelines. And they're usually a little bit, they don't want to risk things as much because style guidelines are pretty specific, right? We know where it's supposed to go. So it's kind of like, you can fudge it a little bit, but really it's like, it says where it's supposed to go, but at the same time, I acknowledge that and usually don't. So,
well, if you make your brand name too long, because how Amazon used to force the brand name in the title.
Oh
If
yeah.
you make your brand name too long, they can't do that. So that was like that was the strategy for a little while for people. They would take their brand name and then add a dash and then like a phrase. And then Amazon just would be forced, now, hey, you're exceeding our title character limit, so we can't add it. It was really interesting. But now they're not letting you publish listings unless you can verify it to a brand or else put NA in the brand. So they're making that harder to do.
Right.
For sure. Okay, guys. So we talked a lot about the title. We're going to go into images. I've seen online. I don't know. Part of me thinks it's a little false here, but it says 9 images max. I know some listings you can get up to I've seen 7. I've never seen 9, and I'm not sure if that's because maybe some categories allow you, maybe some don't. Either way, it'll be interesting to hear your guys' take on that. But images are definitely, I think, the kind of most. Well, there's all pieces that are all important. It's kind of like a car. Like there's not one wheel that's more important than the other wheels. I mean, they all make the car function, right? But it's definitely a core piece of your listing is having really well optimized images, mainly the main image, because the main image is like the first thing that people are going to see from the SERP page, which is the search engine result page. And that's kind of what grabs their attention in most cases, other than like maybe price and reviews and so on. So what is kind of your guys' thought about the whole 9 images? Again, I could be wrong here, but I think 9 sounds a little high to me, but either way, that's what I looked up and that's what it said. And I was like, oh, I've never seen that before. I remember it being like 6 or 7.
I think that's category specific. Like I really do think it changes because I've seen some, it looks like it's weird too. They'll truncate it on the page. You click a button and then like the rest of them pop up. Maybe that was an experiment they don't do anymore. There was a period of time though when there were more images for some categories. They might be streamlining that now, so that data might be a little old. Either way, I'm of the opinion that you should try to fill up as many of your images as possible, just because, in lieu of being able to actually hold your product in their hand and inspect every angle of it, giving them as many images as possible to kind of do that with virtually is a great way, at least to convert those people, because there's different kinds of browsers, but there will always be those browsers, those people who have to like do deep research, right? They're going to read your bullet points. They're going to look at every image. And for those people, you want to give them the imagery, because think about how many times they don't buy a product just because they have 2 images and that's it, right? Like they'll literally skip over it because you haven't given me enough information. And you want to try and convert as many people as possible. So
yeah, it's a great point. And my understanding too is that it is category specific, and we have we have best practices when it comes to trying to use like the 7th position video on image 7, so that dedicated space where you can display more media rich content in the form of video. But I'm of the same mind, and we're sort of also starting to bleed into user interactions, right? Because as you add more media onto your listing, you have more things, as Anthony mentioned, that a customer can do, spend time on that detail page, but not only for the rank benefit, but for the conversion readiness in terms of, realizing sales, when you can have a lifestyle image, or we know a user or a potential customer has to scroll down to see all these really detailed reviews. Well, is an image a good way to convey or pull out a testimonial or a positive customer experience? So it's valuable real estate. Yeah, there's really, it's very rare, I would say, the circumstance where it makes sense to not use all those image and video placements above the fold on your listing.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so what do you guys think looks like the best kind of, like, what does a really, really well optimized main image look like? So I'm going to give kind of my iteration, and then you guys can go over with that. Mine is like a really, either really, really, really good like white background image of like the product, and it's extremely zoomed in. Like you let's say the product was, said big, right? You're just to say like it perfectly fits, right? You're maximizing the amount of real estate you could pick up with that image. Or it's a really, really, really good 3D render of said product that looks really, really clean. I know that's Amazon doesn't necessarily like renders, but they look really, if you have a good person that can do these 3D renders, it's very accurate to the actual product itself, and it just looks so much cleaner in terms of like that image you can get. And as long as the background of the image is white and you're not like showing off all these other things that aren't really related to said product. So for me, it's like taking up the amount, like the most amount of space with the actual product, and then just that's it. What do you guys think on kind of the main image? Like what would your main image look like? The ideal anyways.
Well, I agree with that. But I think that's, I think most people would probably agree that that's a good practice, both because it maximizes the actual product and the image, and also that's Amazon's literal term of service. Like you have to have a white background image
But
that
they
only
don't like
shows
3D
depicts the
renders though.
product. I don't, unless things have changed, I don't recall seeing anything where they were like, no, I mean, they prefer a real image, but not every instance lends itself to the capability of having the most clear image be a real image. But to add to that, what I will say is other important things that people need to note. It's really important to note mobile optimization with regard to your main image. What that means is if you have anything that's rectangular in shape, it's going to look smaller than your competitors' main images on mobile. That is important to account for. Amazon actually has kind of like another algorithm, an engine, essentially, that maximizes for mobile the white space around an image, kind of like makes it disappear so it can maximize the area in which your actual image is there. So if you have an image that has a single pixel that looks invisible to the naked eye, that's out of place, it could then turn around and make your image look shrunk because of that. So that's why it's super important to make sure that essentially everything I upload has a completely transparent background. And I let Amazon fill that part with white. But it's because I want to make sure that there aren't any pixels kind of throwing that off. Don't do anything rectangular, make it a perfect square. Or, if your product is shaped in a way that a perfect square doesn't work well, a longer, like a portrait, is definitely also going to work because those do show up bigger with that optimization in mobile. So I would say that's very, very, very important. Definitely optimize your main image for mobile.
Yeah, those are all really important points. Desktop to mobile, and most people may not know this. So I think some do and are adjusting for it, but mobile's the future, right? So being mindful of mobile, it actually needs to be sort of foremost in your mind. So everything that Anthony touched on is really important. What's also very important is higher contrast when you are working with a white background. And doing so with sort of the competitive landscape in mind. Amazon is unless you are direct linking from an external source, it is a compare and contrast marketplace. So how your image looks relative to competitors, it's not always fun to obsess over your competitors, but put yourself in the buyer or potential buyer shoes, right? What are they comparing and weighing? What is standing out visually? Can you make a tweak? Can you put your product at an angle? Can you spell out different elements of still the product? So you're TOS and TOS friendly in terms of what you're displaying, but can you show it in such a way that's a little bit more compelling? So I think that contrast is important. The competitor, the compare and contrast aspects are really important. And then just compelling. How are you doing something a little bit unique? And it doesn't have to be, like I said, we'll often test that. It's just things at angles, trying an angle one way, another way. We've done some pretty silly stuff in the past where it doesn't make sense, but it's visually jarring and it slows people down. It can earn the click. And then we let the detail page, once we've earned that click, do more of the heavy lifting with the main image. So you have to think of it. Your main image, we touched on some of the few variables you see in the search results. That's all your hook. you've got to bait that potential or prospective customer with those few pieces of information. So your main image has to do a lot of heavy lifting.
I agree. Okay, so say for example, we had, let's say 7 images as max, because that's usually kind of the standard that I've seen in the space. Main image aside, what would you say the other 6 images should be? Like obviously you can have some lifestyle, you can have some of those statistics, or infographics where it's like maybe you compared to competitors in the space, right? What would you say the other 6 should be? Just kind of, would you say like 2 like this, or 2 like that, and 2 like this? So for me, I'm just gonna kind of give my version, and then you guys could take your take on it. I usually like to do 2 kind of I guess stat images where like you say the measurements, maybe you compare it with another item that's fairly standard, like some money or something like that. And then you could say, okay, this is what this is the material, right? Like those little kind of bullet points, and you could see what the product is made out of and maybe the use cases, so on, in the image itself. So those 2 images for that, and then probably 2 lifestyle, and then maybe 1 kind of competitor, like us versus the competition, right? You could like show your product, and then just like some generic version of the competition. Obviously don't use your competitor's image, but show a competitor and show like little ticks like, oh look, this is what we have, this is they don't have this. And then maybe even like a brand story if you could on the last kind of image. But that last one is kind of negotiable, where you can do whatever you want. If you want to do another lifestyle, then you could, or if you wanted to do another kind of infographic kind of image, then you could. What would you guys say for those 6 images? What would you put in, like, lifestyle, or so I'll let you guys.
Okay, remaining 6 images. Okay, so for starters, I'm a big advocate of not using text when possible, right? Like I want to try to avoid that. And the reason is because looking at images takes way less brain power than reading text. So 1 image is as comprehensive as possible of a demonstration of the product in use compared to another product. Kind of like the Bounty commercial. 1 paper towel is falling apart, the other paper towel is intact. Not every product lends itself to that. If yours doesn't, that's okay. But I definitely think that if you can't, like if you have a mop or a sponge mop for the kitchen, like you need to have that image side by side of yours sopping everything up and the other one leaving a trail. Like if you can show that, absolutely that image is important. The rest of the images, all the other, and that's like literally the second image in the right after your main image. The other 5 should all have people's faces, because psychologically, like they convert better. A mixture of lifestyle and then social proof, right? So maybe 3 with people using the product or just smiling in the picture with your product, and then a couple with like reviews actually on the page. I know I said I don't like to use text, but in this instance, you would want to use it because that's the social proof. But all of them should have faces, and then you should definitely include social proof in it. That's my ideal strategy.
Okay.
Might sound like an echo here, but yeah, I think humanizing pictures is big. It's really big, because again, you have to think about somebody, Amazon saying white background everywhere, bunch of text. They're slowly migrating to being more media rich. So it's welcoming more images. We have posts, we have lives, we have, interactive, video ads. It's getting to be more of that way. But when it comes to your listing, when you've earned that click, if you can humanize it through the interaction with the product, or give in the review equation, give because again, a user has to scroll all the way down to the bottom of a detail page to actually read reviews. All they get is a star rating. It's not very exciting, just a view star rating. It maybe it piques some interest, but through an image, if you can say, person Charlotte had a great experience with this product, easily display 5 stars, you can sort of check off the box, save them some of the heavy lifting and the energy that it takes to actually scroll down, and keep them at that level of being able to add to cart. Now, again, your strategy may include more user interactions. You want to be mindful of that. But when it comes to the use of images, humanizing them, the social proof aspect is huge. And then thinking about, do you want somebody to view all of the images as well? I've seen really cool executions where people use watermarks to kind of like point arrows in different directions, and it kind of makes you visually want to view all of the images. or like one will actually kind of be a completely different color. And so it makes it kind of stand out, but then you want to view all of them. So think about that too, is, if you're going to use that real estate, how can you in a playful way make sure somebody consumes that content, interacts with it as well.
Fair enough, that makes sense. All right, so we're going to kind of move on from images to go into bullet points. Now I say here there's a maximum of 5 because in most normal circumstances there is. Obviously you could do some fancy things where you could do flat file uploads where you can actually have like, I think it's up to 10, I believe. Who knows, it could be changing, it could be less than that, it could be more. But I do know you can have, there are many listings with many more kind of bullet points, more than 5. And I believe,
I was just gonna say that's not necessarily a flat file upload perk. That's certain categories have additional features that just happen to appear above the bullets. Like sometimes material is up there in color and it just shows up as an extra bullet. And that's all category specific though.
Yep, that makes sense for sure. So just in terms of like how many characters you can have, usually it's 200 max. I don't think you want to take up the entire real estate because like Anthony said, like you don't want the user to kind of go over like these huge, massive bullet points. You want to try to make it fairly easy to read and straight to the point. Obviously try to put in the most relevant terms too. So your index and it shows Amazon, okay, you're relevant for these terms because they're in the bullet points. So for me, I like to keep them very short. Like usually I'll like whatever the main thing is, like there's like, we'll just pretend like this listing has 5 bullet points. Okay. So I'll have 5 kind of main things that I want to touch on, whether that maybe be like 3 of them maybe features and then 2 of them be benefits, or maybe 3 benefits and 2 features, so on. And then you just talk about it, right? So you have that first little bit kind of in bold, if you will. And then the rest could be just like you talking about that said feature or benefit. What would you guys kind of recommend for bullet points, and like how many characters would you necessarily have per bullet point if you were to use 5 in this example?
Sure. Really quickly, super briefly, before we get to my bullet points, there were a couple of questions that came in about the images. One was about the file name for Amazon images, and the other one was about using the file name for Amazon images to put ASIN and brand name for competitors because of Google indexing. And I will hit both of those. Unless things have changed, our tests, and I'll admit it has been a while since we've tested this, show that regular images, as far as we can tell, don't appear, the file name doesn't appear to index. A+ imagery, however, is the exception to that. A+ imagery, file names absolutely index. So you should probably put keywords in there. Regular images don't seem to. Number 2, with regard to using your competitors' ASINs, that's not going to mean anything to Google. So I don't think that would really matter much if you're doing it from the perspective of doing it so Google indexes it. But you can definitely test trying to put keywords in there. In my experience, Google is very slow to index pages, and it often doesn't index the whole thing. Usually the title is the most important portions of the the bullets in the description. I have yet to see Google actually show in its preview of what of the portion that it indexed when you did the search be a file name from an image though. So that said, moving on to bullet points, my personal strategy, all 5 will have the most condensed relevant point in all caps. This is for my people who scan, my scanners, because they're not going to read the bullets. So I'm just going to take a benefit and just put it in all caps, right? And I always try to make sure that this is benefit driven. I like to ratchet up all of my copy from benefit to the actual emotion. So really it'll be like, can I depict here the emotion that they will feel from using this product? And I don't care how boring it is, like literally any emotion. If I'm selling a garlic press, I'm going to tell people, you're going to feel like a pro chef, right? Because you're crushing your garlic. This is I've done this with can openers. Like this is my strategy. Then after that emotion driven benefit, there's a dash, all caps, then there's a dash, and then I explain what I just said, but in more words. I don't have a character limit on this, literally however many words it took for me to explain to you what the heck I was just talking about, right? Feel like a pro chef. Your garlic is going to be perfectly minced and crushed. So you'll feel like you're working in a professional kitchen in your own home. How many characters that was, I have no idea. However many it takes to get that message across. That's my strategy.
Yeah, I love that too. And I don't know if we've been trained to do that. And it's in terms of customers being able to, because, we sort of read in a pretty extreme pattern, especially if you're scrolling and you're sort of in market and looking at different products. So I love that. We do that with a lot of our own products where we try to extract. We probably don't do as good of a job of pulling out some of the emotional benefits. So I think that's a really key takeaway in terms of how Anthony approaches it. Obviously we're immensely cognizant of keywords, how we're ranking or how we're indexing, maintaining that indexation for keywords. Bullet points, we don't view to be as weighted as heavily. So factor that in. And that's where some of the psychology, the buyer psychology, bullet points really can be used, for that section. And it can often be a lot. I mean, when you sort of try to remove yourself from the seller lens and view it, you sort of think, man, I've got to read this 3 or 4 paragraphs about a product that if I'm in market, I already kind of know about it. There's already important things that I'm seeking out. You sort of have to view it, I think, a little bit cynically. And I think that's where, to Anthony's point, it's important to kind of like extract exactly what is going to get into somebody's feelings and their emotions that it's related to that product.
All right, makes sense. So I'm going to try to like ramp things up a little bit on speed, because I do see we've almost been here for an hour.
Take a quick second, we're riffing like crazy, which is awesome. I love this. But for those that are attending live, one quick thing is I dropped the free Solo Tools Chrome extension. I just wanted to mention it while we're looking at on Page SEO, because our team did an excellent job of giving a tool that is free that gives you some of the insights that we're touching on in terms of quantity of keywords that are utilized in your listing. Are you making the most of that real estate? The quality, are you indexing? Are you indexing for like Aplus, EBC, various parts of your listing? Are you using all the media you can? Is it conversion ready? So make sure, please, to download that. The team's done a great job of putting together a really powerful resource. But I wonder, Tyler and Anthony, not to put you on the spot, if we should maybe do 2 Amazon SEO sessions, because I don't think we're going to get through everything we have for everybody today.
I really don't think so either, because I'm looking at the time and I'm like, wow. Because I know we all know we have left, but yeah, I know it's yeah, and there's a lot of questions too I'd like to answer. So I don't know exactly how we should be doing this. Obviously, we didn't plan this out perfectly, guys. Usually they last a little over an hour long, but this is probably gonna last 2 hours at this pace.
If I may, I'm good until 2 p.m., 3 p.m. Eastern. But if I can make a suggestion, maybe we try to get through the rest of this presentation, answering questions where we see them fit into the presentation. Otherwise, we could do a second session and it just be an AMA, like literally follow up to the first SEO presentation, ask us anything, and the entire thing will just be us answering questions.
Okay. Fair enough. I think
that sounds good.
Stay a little longer. Well, I'll just try to go through this a little bit more. I didn't think it would be, this extensive, the responses. So pricing, obviously stay competitive. Not every product needs to necessarily be like super crazy competitive. Sometimes it makes sense to be more of that premium product, or if you're maybe selling something that's a little cheaper than the others, then you can price a little bit lower. So obviously pricing is something that you can definitely test to. Like you can try out maybe new prices over time and then see if you're selling more with a higher price. I've actually had clients that like raised their price and then sold more. And then you might, strap it up just a little bit by little bit. And then once you start seeing the sales come down, then you're like, okay, that's maybe I'm a little too high. And then you come back down. So I think you guys would agree on that.
Yeah, quick note on that though. Amazon likes to make it hard for you to play around with your price. Obviously, you can go down as much as you want, but as soon as you start going back up, you run the risk of losing your own buy box. Amazon does this on purpose. This is the reason why having your own like buyer list or VIP list is so important whenever you want to play around with price. If it's too much and you lose your buy box, the easiest way to get it back is to have sales at that price. So if you have people on your list that are willing to buy your product at any price and they think it's a value, just putting that out there, this is how you do it. You instruct them on how to go. click on the buy box and pick you as the seller. And then after a handful of those, you actually win your buy box back.
That's a good point.
Yeah, huge value add to having a VIP list. That's probably one of the overlooked aspects is that control that it gives you. But my philosophy too with price is that there can often be a desire to manipulate price too much, where obviously know your numbers, back out from your cost of goods, make sure your margin is safe, make sure you kind of look at the logistics and inventory landscape too, so you're not finding a great sweet spot for price as you change it often. And then as you get into Q4, you find that you're not positioned properly to maintain a certain price level. So I think finding a sweet spot may take some time, some change, especially more on the front end of bringing your product to market. But really, it should be your hypothesis, your need to test and alter your price should be very substantiated. Not something I would change often, or I would say.
Okay, fair enough. So for kind of description and then A+ content, again, I'm going to go over this kind of quickly, guys. So I know we're not going to be able to go into crazy amount of detail for everything, but essentially, description is something very standard. You can have up to, I believe it's 2,000 characters. It could be a little bit more, it could be a little less. Well, I don't think it'd be less, but it could be more. It's a good idea to have, a good description. Obviously, I see a lot of products that don't have it at all, which is just kind of like it's like you might as well just at least have like 300 characters or something, just describing the product, even if it's a reiteration of what the bullet points already explain. And then A+ content, that's huge. Even if it just helps your conversion rate by 1%, I mean, that's massive. Over time, that really brings in a lot of revenue, and that can help you rank as well. So if you can make some A+ content, it's not the easiest thing. There are resources out there that you can kind of hire somebody or get that done for you, right? Because not everybody's able to just, make this really stunning kind of A+ content. I don't know if you guys want to maybe just add a little bit there, but
I just want to throw out the numbers according to the guy, and we learned this back when we used to do our Amazon Mastermind Clubhouse. The guy that runs Launchpad over at Amazon gave us some stats. Average lift with A+ content is 5%. Average lift with A+ premium was 22%. The reason why is because A+ premium offers video specifically about the brand. So I would take that as a cue to utilize your description or A+ content, whatever you have access to talk about your brand story, because that was the driving factor that made A+ premium so valuable to people. Maybe most people only like to look at that in video format, but if the stats are telling me that people like to read and hear, to see and hear about a brand and their story, and that creates an average lift in conversion, that tells me that no matter what I have access to, even if I don't have a brand, I'm not brand registered, all I have is a description, this is the area to tell that story. For all those people who actually care about that, that's a conversion maker right there.
good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, that's huge. And when we heard that, I think we were in the same room when we heard that from the Amazon rep, which was pretty eye opening. Which I also think, again, as we mind mobile, we think about the mobile experience. A+ content weighs heavily there. We now know and really can confirm that that content is also, it's all indexable, so it's all very much searchable, and it's a lot of real estate. So this is really where, again, if you have an abundance of misspellings, you have multi-language, you have a lot of things that maybe don't fit in other parts of a listing. Creatively incorporating those into A+ content is a great way to kind of back into some of those relevant keywords. When you sell a product, and I've sold a few where half of the keywords feel like misspellings, and you think, oh well, I'm going to throw that in my title, and somebody's never going to have heard me before, and they're going to see, they're going to be somebody who exact match searches, and it's like, does this person brand know how to spell their own product? But that's where with A+ content, and also known as, or maybe search for as, there's a lot of creative ways you can tie that into A+, but it's really valuable real estate. And Amazon's continuing to brand registry, the authority of a brand, the unique feature set, all of that's getting to be really important when it comes to the optimization side, and then how that translates into performance and performance bumps that we see when you use it.
All right. So there's only one video that can be in the kind of in the detail page right under images, or maybe like recite images, depending of mobile or desktop kind of view. But essentially, if you can, make an image, like make a video that's somewhat compelling, that really displays the product, maybe the brand story. There's a lot of really, really good videos out there that really show the product. And there's a couple that are not so good, but either way, at least they have it on there. It is something that adds a little bit more, like the customers actually get to see it maybe in use, or if one picture gives 1,000 words, then a video's must give like 10,000 or way more, because it's basically images kind of going off, and you get to see what the thing is in a little bit more live kind of action. So what is your guys' thoughts on kind of the video? Like, obviously you guys are going to say like have it, but what do you think you should have? Yeah.
Have that comparison video, that comparison that I was talking about. Have that there. But here's the thing, that video is the only place you can put in your listing, but you also have related video shorts and review videos, and you should absolutely be having people add to those too. The more moving picture content you have somewhere on your listing, the more opportunities you have to make a conversion. Those are the most powerful conversion levers on any marketplace. I mean, that's why Etsy added it to their listings too. Like it's huge. So absolutely use that to display your product in all its glory, how it outshines the competitors, how it works. Proof right there. Hey, I see it working. I see it working better than that guy's. This is the one I need. In as many places as humanly possible, and you will convert more.
I agree completely. And related video shorts is one that's often overlooked, but yeah, absolutely use it. And a lot of the best practices we touched on for images are still strong there. You just think about this is where you don't want to miss the nuance of your customer avatar, the category that you're in. Factor that in when you're developing these videos, and not just it's not to paint with a broad brush and say everybody should do it this way. It's just a big. I like the idea of thinking about humanizing. That's a big thing when it comes to the media, because everything else on your listing is just a bunch of buttons and copy, and it's anti-human. It's very robotic. It's very it can be kind of boring if you think about just extracting the images, where video is a good way to create a more media rich experience.
Okay. All right. Yeah, all makes sense to me. So alt text. Now, alt text is basically what you're able to embed inside an image. This is more for kind of like web developers that kind of have their own website, but there is a section where you can actually, if you're a brand registry, you can actually put this inside your Aplus content, where they can have their own alt text. Unfortunately, not everybody might not be a brand registry, but just something for you guys to consider if you are brand registry, or something that you guys are maybe looking into, or maybe want to be looking into, that you can actually embed certain search terms inside your alt text, and it helps search engines basically identify what the image is about, and it's just a good way to get indexed. You guys want to add a little bit to that, or?
Nope, that's it. Stephen Pope says that the alt text indexes in Amazon, so this is almost like your extended use of subject matter keywords. Those are being phased out, but if you have A+ alt text, then you can add keywords.
Yep. Yeah, it's another one that's good for quick indexing too. So I think somebody had a question too about like older listing, non-index keyword. Think about, if you are brand registered, tying in and trying that out. Always plugging it into titles or other portions of your listing can be helpful, but that's another one to test.
Okay. All right. So the backend search terms, again, I think you just said that they were kind of phasing these out. I know they phased out, I think it was called search. I think it's subject matter. I think that's what it was called.
Yeah, some categories phased out subject matter. Backend search terms will always be there. I think that's like their primary. We have to give the sellers a place to put keywords that should be indexed, but don't make sense on the listing detail page. So, yeah.
Anyways, so basically, more or less, like if you have certain keywords you weren't able to put in the bullet points, the title, description, /A+ content, then this would be the place to kind of plug that in. That's usually how I use this, is like, I build up my listing fully, and then the search terms that I was not really able to kind of plug in to all the other kind of means, I just put it in on the back end search terms.
Yeah,
like
this is a good place. Yeah, this is your good place for like your related but not necessarily like obvious search, keywords. But also this is a good place to kind of plug in gaps. Like if you optimize your listing and for whatever reason, because remember, we're dealing with machines here, they're imperfect. Whatever reason, like you have a really important key, phrase that you're just not indexing for. Sometimes you got to repeat it in the back end, and for some reason it works then, right? Like it's kind of like when your computer's acting up, like you got to start flipping switches. Like that's what you're doing here. Sometimes you got to use that area to plug in holes. So it's good to have. It's good to have. You can play around with it. Messing around with it isn't going to be as detrimental to your listing as like messing around with the title. So that's usually what I reserve that area for.
Yeah, and I put it a little bit higher when it, relative weight. Search terms I put a little bit higher weight on relative to some of the other, even bullet points. But because it's behind the scenes, it is something you can kind of test out and see if you're running into issues with words and phrases not indexing, or maybe some that are missed that you want to throw a little bit higher priority to.
Okay. All right, the last one here is a canonical URL, and then basically this one is probably the least important out of all these. I'm not gonna lie, because you basically have no control or very little control. And essentially what this is just like the 5 words that Amazon picks from your title when you create the title. And that's going to be essentially this link structure of the URL that's kind of gets to your detail page from other search engines. And again, you don't get to pick what 5 words. I remember trying to do some tests here where I was like, I made the listing and it only had 5 words, and then it made the canonical URL like exactly how I wanted it. And then I changed my title, but then it, for whatever reason, once I then kind of launched it, at some point it rechanged that canonical URL to whatever it wanted to pull. So you have very little optimization here. You can't really necessarily force it to have something, but you want to try to hopefully have the most relevant search terms inside there. So that way it tells Google and other search engines that like, hey, this is what they're very relevant for. But again, you don't necessarily get to control it as much as you would hope for.
Yep.
I've heard stories of people reaching out to seller support and asking for adjustments to the, do I believe it? Have I tried it? No. But I found that very, very interesting that people have sort of brought that subject to support and said, hey, my canonical URL should be this. So yeah. And I mean, obviously too, you can create create URLs if you're driving sales to try to force or push it. But I always thought that was interesting. I had not heard that before in the many years, but only recently somebody going to support and saying, hey, can you adjust this for me?
I'm going to try it.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe we're testing out to see.
Why not?
Yeah.
It's always held to go for me anyways. It's always held to talk to them, but if you guys enjoy it, then you guys go for it. So I'd like to kind of go over a little bit of kind of questions, and then we'll go into the next topic. I know that, again, this is probably gonna be a lot later than an hour. So we have quite a bit of questions that have been stacking up. Sorry guys that we haven't been kind of getting to you guys. I've been just kind of listening to the other two talk and taking this in for myself too, actually. So the first thing is what are the uploads keywords that are not advisable in the product description, like best, number, 1, etc. So essentially, what keywords would you not use in their description? So yeah, that's a good question. For me, I'm going to say obviously like best, number 1. You probably do a quick Google search, like what not to type in, what not to have in the Amazon description. That'd be probably a good little result to tell you all the words you shouldn't use. But I don't know necessarily a catalog of all the words that you shouldn't be using, like the no words. I know like hemp and stuff like that, or it's anything to kind of do with certain sensitive topics they don't want you to put in there. But I don't know the list of them. Do you guys, by any chance, know that?
I'm trying to remember. I don't know, Anthony, if you do. I don't know if it's in the style guidelines or not, but the mention of some of what we call like puffery, where it's just overstating, the number 1 or absolute best. It is kind of a no-no, because, obviously Amazon is, I think, man, I wish I could remember that off the top of my head, but like true awards and acknowledgements, I think that you can utilize, but that's from the advertising term. Amazon doesn't want you to, and I think the spirit of the question is in terms of what's advisable. I really try to avoid that altogether too. Most of that doesn't really stick. This is where the social proof does that heavy lifting for you, or humanizing your listing does some heavy lifting for you, versus trying to wordsmith your way into saying we're the best. Now, if you've got like consumer advisors or, top, and you have a award acknowledgement, that's one thing, but I would avoid some of the more puffery related terms.
Yep, I second that. I mean,
Okay.
it is in the style guide. It literally says you can't use, it started out as don't use the word bestseller, best selling, and then it just kind of expanded from there. Amazon doesn't like words like best at all. It's just because they want a very clean and efficient catalog. And so they want the titles to be what the product is. And everything else is just your opinion. And they don't want that.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, really good. It's actually kind of tough to answer, actually, at least with full accuracy. So the next one here is for kind of Amazon SEO graph or infographic. What is the kind of priority via weighting, like on page, off page, and then user interaction? And then what are kind of the sub weighting of all the kind of bullet point categories? At least that's kind of how this reads here. And I'm not going to say that like we have it calculated where like, oh, on page is the most important, and then these three. The way I like to see this is it's kind of like a car. You don't say, well, what wheel is the most important? And the answer is like, well, they're all very important, because if you're losing a wheel or you're missing a wheel, it's not going to drive properly, period. You can obviously argue if you're, rear wheel drive, then like the rear ones are more important because the front ones are dragging. But like the four wheels are the most kind of important. So for me, they're all three circles are very important. I wouldn't specifically give a weight to one being like this is the most important, but it's like if you have very bad on-page SEO, then everything else falls apart. But if you have the greatest on-page, but then you have no users coming in and like the user interaction is just absolutely terrible, then it doesn't matter how good your on-page is. And then if your off-page is, I guess off-page would probably be the one that I would weigh the least of importance, because it's not as important as like maybe the other two. But again, we don't have like certain percentages of like, oh, the title is 50%, or like let's say 20% most important, and then it goes 20% images, and then it goes here. It's all fairly relative. Obviously, there are certain things that are more important, like title is more important than the description, for example. Like again, a lot of listings literally have no description, and they might still sell well, but they have room for improvement. Versus like if you have no title, like I mean that's gonna be a rough one. So I don't actually have percentages to kind of talk about like what is the most important and like what is the least important. I don't know if you guys have a better kind of answer for that.
All of these, well, I want to say all of these are necessary. Off page actually isn't necessary.
Mm-hmm.
On page SEO is necessary. User interactions is the thing that drives the engine. You want to talk about the most weighted, that's user interaction. You can have the crappiest listing in the world as long as all of those elements are there, as in all the required places for Amazon to index and know like this product is this thing and this is like what it's relevant for. Then if it becomes a bestseller, guess what? It's ranking. Why? Because user interaction drives everything. So the on-page SEO is important because that kind of tells Amazon like this is what we should index for. This is what we think we're relevant for. This is all the available information and data so that you can decide where on your catalog to put this. User interaction is the voting system that moves it to higher visibility on that catalog. And then off-page SEO is just kind of ancillary. It helps get more user interaction because Amazon doesn't really care about backlinks unless it drives traffic that converts. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. We see, I think, enough examples of this, of on-page SEO being pretty underwhelming. But when you just welcome an abundance of still relevant traffic, traffic that is equating to page interactions, that is enough. And that's where if you see like the halo effect of a brand that's direct to consumer coming on Amazon, and then they just bring in this influx of user interactions from customers, they'll get rewarded, they'll spike up their rank, and they'll be highly visible. And the off-page SEO is where we take, this is like Tyler, you and I, when we take things like ManyChat and we think, okay, how do we take off-page or external factors to drive more user interactions? Because that implies that we own more of that customer experience, to where we can say, hey, would you share with us your favorite, review as one of my favorites, or, you have add to cart strategies. You have a lot of different things that you can do, but user interactions definitely does get weighted, I think, more heavily if you have to kind of break these down.
Okay. So another question here, and again, we've got quite a few here, but brand analytics versus other keyword research tools. So I think Troy said it really well. Like, brand analytics is like the gold standard of like kind of keyword research. It's just not necessarily the easiest thing, and not everybody has access to it. So if you can, definitely use brand analytics. It literally gives you kind of a BSR of kind of where the keywords stand. The way I think of BSR, and I know not everybody kind of sees it like this, but I look at it as like kind of like a leaderboard, right? Like, this is kind of like the nerd me, where it's like, you look at it like a video game where like the number 1 is the top player, right? And then further down the line, you got like number 2, 3, 4, whatever, so on. And the lower the number, the higher that kind of keyword is on that leaderboard. And it obviously fluctuates over time. Some search terms will go down, maybe it's a seasonal thing, so on. But that's obviously where brand analytics comes in, because it literally tells you what keywords are at the top of that leaderboard. And again, you want to be going with the lowest number, the better. Higher number, the lower that player is. So that's kind of how I look at brand analytics versus other keyword research tools.
Yeah. And the link that I dropped for the Chrome extension, we do make brand analytics available through the Chrome extension. It's called a tool called Keyword Insights. So you can look at search frequency rank, the data point that Tyler's mentioning. We have it in Seller Tools as well. But yeah, again, I've seen the question come up quite a bit. And I mean, I guess that's a credit to any tool that can be viewed as close to Amazon data. But the truth is that Amazon data is just the best, and it's not even remotely close, because you have to think you're going to the source, right? We're all sort of looking at the source, we're analyzing it, we're coming up with algorithms, we're meshing data points, and brand analytics is just there saying, well, we're the real thing. You can either view us, use us, or you can, I don't want to say compromise, but it is sort of you have it there. It is an option. So whether it's brand registry, whether it's through the tools that make it available, I would encourage finding a way of trying to get your hands on
it. Okay. So the next one, how will keyword stuffing negative?
Tyler, let's maybe, because I think if Anthony's got to run at 3 p.m., I think we're going to probably have to get through, if we want to get through the other two, and I want to make sure everybody gets these, because these are also really powerful topics.
All right. So in other words, skip the questions and keep going.
Yeah, no, I mean, if we can, what I want to encourage, if those that aren't part of our Facebook group, FBA Kings, I would love to just continue the conversation there. They're great questions. I'd love to answer them, but I don't think we'll have time to do both.
All right. The boss is saying continue, guys. So
does that work, Anthony? You go with that?
Yeah, man.
Let's do it. Okay.
All right, guys. So now we're into off-page SEO. I'm not going to lie. I was even kind of planning on skimming on this, just because this is something that's, again, in terms of the other two circles, this is the least of importance one. So geo ranking and inventory / shipping times. Now, this is something that I don't think gets talked about too much in kind of the Amazon SEO space, but it is definitely a thing where, based on where your product is on their fulfillment centers, they'll actually help you or boost, like they may negatively impact you or positively impact you, because Amazon is trying to get the fastest shipping times as possible for their customers. And if, let's say, they're in Florida and there's no fulfillment centers that have your product in Florida, you may see your rankings in that specific state be lower than say New York, where you have a lot of stock inside. What are your guys' kind of thoughts on kind of geo ranking and then shipping times?
That's literally the foundation. What's funny is that we do so much kind of diving into the ranking algorithm without realizing that the preceding algorithms, the thing that's kind of the backbone of all of Amazon, is the the inventory forecasting algorithm. If you go to Amazon.science right now, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I think it's like almost a month ago, there was a brand new paper going over 20 years of the forecasting algorithm. And it's really interesting read. You read it, you kind of talk I mean, a lot of it's really technical, but it kind of talks about all the machine learning algorithms that they've employed from back starting in 2008 all the way until now, and briefly like how they've improved on it. But you'll notice there's a lot of crossover between like the algorithms that they employ for this and the algorithms that they employ for ranking. But you know, the foundation of everything that Amazon does is figuring out where the most relevant product is with regard like and where the most relevant product is, and part of relevance is it easily accessible to this shopper, right? So that's the reason why geo rank is a thing, because geography is important, because part of relevance is, you know, do we have this thing that functions as a garlic press within 2 days of shipping to this prime user? Like that's an important portion of that. So it's not talked a lot about because it's a really complicated concept, but it's absolutely foundational to everything that Amazon does.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think the complexity, if you have to simplify it, it is, and I view this in the same way for ranking, is that, you know, what Amazon does is pretty intuitive, and by that what I mean is that they do what you kind of expect them to do, is that they want organic, relevant traffic from a variety of sources. So there's a heavy amount of demand from all different places to land on a listing, to spend more time there, to add that to cart, to buy it. And geo ranking is sort of that same intuitive thing where if you don't have that product readily available for a service, the global e-commerce giant that is Amazon, to where you can't facilitate their 2-day minimum prime shipping expectation, and we know that continues to get smaller and smaller, and you know, you have next day, same day, within the hour. It's, you know, market specific. So this is where the geo comes in. That's what Amazon is really continuing to move to. So this could be something that continues to be very hypersensitive. And so, you know, what's important is really kind of substantiating your footprint now, because as we know with restock limits, we think about 3PL implications and being closer to fulfillment centers as there gets to be more fulfillment centers. You know, how you can try to gamify this. You know, pick your 3PL next to your most popular fulfillment center, or thinking about how that fits into your different nodes in your logistics. Multiple 3PLs, even if it's more cost intensive, that may mean you are more readily available to be at a fulfillment center to then positively impact GeoRank. So this is really where, for sellers, especially small operations, it can be a lot to wrap your head around, but you have to sort of think in terms of Amazon wants to just make it easy to get to generate revenue. And they do that by having products readily available as close to the customer for that relevant product based on that keyword as possible. And GeoRank's it's just a part of that equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we even saw at it like during the start of the kind of pandemic last year, where it was like kind of the first time I've ever noticed this, where some of the FBM orders were actually being pushed up because their shipping time was shorter than the FBA orders, because Amazon was so backed up at this kind of the start of things because of the ramp up of sales, as well as kind of the logistics just being kind of shot through. So it was very interesting to see where, like, for a short period of time, like 3PLs were actually, I don't want to say king, but they were more, they were actually helping sellers because it was, you know, ranked higher a little bit because the shipping times were a little bit more reasonable than Amazon shipping times, because Amazon had massive shipping times. It took forever to get stuff in, and it was quite a mess. Okay, so we're going to go over kind of backlinks. Now, backlinks are essentially just links that go straight to your listing, and these can come from, you know, article, blog pages, YouTube videos, all kinds of things. And there's two different type of links, and this is more kind of relevant for like kind of Google SEO. But again, this is off page, so like you want to, it's off Amazon. So there's do follow and then no follow. So do follow is something that Google can actually see where the traffic is coming from. And then no follow is something that they don't see where the traffic is coming from. They'll still kind of see that listing is getting traffic from wherever, but they don't know necessarily the source of that traffic. Obviously, do follow is something you really want. Those are kind of links that can be maybe brought from straight from a blog article that has maybe some type of relevance to your product, right? Maybe it's talking about, best ways to cook, and then your garlic press comes up. So these are kind of the link structures. I do believe Amazon definitely, they're looking at the sources of traffic for sure. I know that for like basically 100%, obviously I can't confirm, but they're definitely looking at the sources. And I know for a fact, Google has been looking at these kind of sources too. So if you're trying to kind of, win over Google inside the search results, right? So your listing comes up for whatever search term you're relevant for, then these type of links are really, really good, like any kind of backlink. Do you guys want to just maybe talk about a little bit on this? I know this is something that almost never gets talked about, but it's fairly important. I wouldn't say it's like the most important, but it's part of the wheel.
All I have to add is, in my experience, Amazon very much so cares about Google. I mean, not just my experience, literally 50% of the documents that I got to witness was on this topic. Amazon cares about Google traffic. I'm sure to some degree, Amazon cares about the domain authority of other traffic. It does appear that Amazon will favorably, shower gifts on listings that are spread far and wide by their affiliates. But in my opinion, one of the best uses and benefits of backlinks is to rank on Google, so that then like the path shows that Google was part of that equation. And Amazon does care about that, and they do track like as much of that path as humanly possible, so that they can confirm that either their associates or high domain value websites are leading people back to their website.
Okay.
Yeah, of the three, it's probably the area where I need more direct experience. The paid external and the organic external are where I spend a little bit more of my time, especially the paid, because you can implement and impose a little bit more control. But backlinks, it's one of those things. Again, I know it's important, but not as bring in subject matter experts to help support that, as opposed to implementing that directly.
Okay. So I'm just going to go over kind of paid and then organic really quickly, and then we'll go into the next kind of circle here. So essentially kind of paid traffic, this is something that's fairly simple. You just kind of set up your ad account. And if you're brand registry, you can actually go for, I think it's by Amazon attribution, or no, did I say that wrong? I believe I said that right, where you can actually track to make sure, oh, I'm getting conversions, right, from like places like Google or YouTube or any of those kind of outlets. So it's a smart way for you to actually track to make sure you're getting those conversions. Back in the day, there wasn't really a way. It's starting to become a little bit more known, and Amazon's actually enticing people to do it, meaning they're going to share their referral revenue with you. I think they give you about a 10%. Maybe it's based on category, but they give you a little bit. So they really want to entice their sellers to push as much traffic to their listing as possible. So if you do have brand registry, I definitely look into Google, even if it's not 100% profitable. It's like, even if you're able to, let's say, break even, or maybe at a little bit of a loss, if you're running Google ads and they're converting, you're going to see kind of results based on that. So they definitely look at that. And then as for organic, again, ranking on Google is really huge, but it's just something that, like, there's not a lot of topics about it, or content about it, and B, it's not as simple as, say, gamifying Amazon search engine, right? Amazon, you can kind of run all these rebates, and there's all this content about kind of gamifying a little bit on Amazon search engine, but gamifying Google search engine is much different. They kind of operate quite a bit different, because Amazon's really conversion focused, and then I would say Google's more user focused, man. Like, they just want to make sure their users find what they're looking for, and then they're pleased, and then they move on to whatever other searches that they're thinking of doing. So yeah, those are two big things. I don't know if you guys want to add to that. No.
Nope,
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would note for like paid external traffic, don't overthink it. Steep discounts for Google Ads gets you both. It gets you conversion ready traffic if they're in market, but then it also, you can usually, if you can work with the numbers, you can sometimes try to break even, if not have a little bit of room there. So that's just an important way of thinking. Okay, if Google, with all the authority, if I want to just send through a bunch of relevant keyword rich traffic, with what they're doing with the brand referral program, it's kind of nice that 10% is not across every category. And it's like super delayed when you'll actually receive that back. So it's not something you want to think about from a cash flow perspective. It's not bad, but what I would say just again on the Google ad side is, maybe don't overthink it. Just know your numbers, know you're driving it from a strong domain and authority, and then you can just kind of set it up and optimize it. It's pretty straightforward when it comes to kind of thinking about maybe some of your mid-range keywords, and then going up into your bigger main keywords for a given product.
All right. And I'm just going to kind of give these little nuggets for kind of ranking on Google organically. Like, I had one client that we were working, and we seen an influx of traffic, and we were just like, oh man, I wonder where this came from. And then I ended up doing some Google searches, and I saw that he was really high up in Google search results. And then that translated it being later on like higher in Amazon search results. So there's like kind of like a flywheel effect of like, once you get that ball rolling, it's much easier to keep going. Some of the things we've done in the past is like, getting backlinks. You can buy them. There's a lot of services out there where you can buy backlinks. Another really good one for Google, so it works for Google and probably Amazon as well, but it's just not something to talk about. It's like actually buying people to click on your listing, where you like tell them to search something, and then you tell them to find your specific kind of search result on Google, and then they click it, and then they just maybe scroll around a little bit, and then they leave. That will actually help you in terms of ranking on Google. Okay, so let's go off to the next one, user interactions, guys. So user interactions, this is where you're able to, like, these are essentially kind of the, like Anthony, you had said, ways that customers can vote your product up, essentially, in manner of speaking. And the big things that Amazon's looking for, and these aren't the only things, obviously there's probably a lot more than this, but things like conversion rate, the amount, we'll talk about conversion rate. So conversion rate is, in my opinion, probably, I would say it's up there in terms of like the most important. It's not the most important. Like like we said in the past, you were able to just do add to carts, and even though your conversion rate was tanking, you were still able to rank. And then hopefully, once you stopped add to carts, and then you'd maintain rank, and people would purchase the product. I don't think you can. I've done it in the past. You can't get away with that nowadays. You definitely need to have some type of conversion rate there. So let me get your guys' take on conversion rate. Like, would that be, in your opinion, the most important metric if you were to focus on just kind of all the ones here?
From this list, yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the more important ones. To kind of address what was discussed earlier, though, conversion rate it's more complex than just unit session percentage. Okay, so once upon a time, somebody was testing this, right? Because everybody agreed, hey, conversion rate's obviously a really important factor with regard to ranking. When we run these blasts, for example, our conversion rate happens to go up. It's interesting because you could actually test services, right? One service that sent all of the traffic to the listing, another service that sent all of the traffic to the listing only after an agreement that they would make the purchase. This was back when coupons worked like gangbusters, 95% off, 99% off, right? Notice that the one that has the higher conversion rate, all of a sudden, like they were outperforming. I mean, we're talking for the same product, similar, volume keywords. Dive deeper into that, everybody accepts that. Okay, hey, conversion rate's big on this. Dive, deeper into that, and people are afraid. Well, if I send external traffic and it doesn't convert, it's going to tank my listing. Then we have people testing this, right? I knew a person personally whose product went viral on Reddit, got, I mean, tens of thousands of impressions, 0 conversions, did nothing to his rank. So then I started testing Facebook ads directly to the listing. Looking at my reporting in Amazon, unit session percentage, I'm getting 130 clicks per day. My sessions in Amazon only show at 70 something, which was not out of the ordinary, by the way. What that told me was that they weren't even counting these sessions from Facebook. So that's when I realized that conversion rate is not so cut and dry. Conversion rate matters basically it appears that external conversions that don't convert at all from external traffic, it doesn't seem to have like to factor in anything. Amazon's more concerned about internal conversions and then conversions that actually like convert, right? Like actual conversions. But otherwise, like the negative impact is dramatically decreased with regard to just external traffic, because they understand like your product could end up on a completely irrelevant website somewhere, get tons of traffic, and nothing happens because it's irrelevant. And I think it's sophisticated enough for that. But with regard to the list that you shared here, conversion rate is going to be a big one. I'm not sure that it's bigger than add to cart though, only because just based on some of the like one of the internal documents that I saw was all about Amazon choice, and the Amazon choice algorithm actually like it stops tracking at the add to cart, and I had to sit there and wonder, okay, so we've already seen the chart where it shows that add to cart has like the highest rank weight. Now I'm seeing this tag completely based on like the beginning of the interaction and then it ends at add to cart. I have to wonder how many of their other algorithms operate the exact same way where the interaction ends at add to cart. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why would they do that? If you think about it, they spend a ton of money on retargeting. They already know that 80% of people abandon cart, right? So it's like, haven't they already figured out everything they need to figure out with regard to relevance by the time you added it to your cart, right? Like, do you actually have to purchase it for them to know that that keyword that was searched and this product are a relevance match? So that's kind of my philosophy behind that.
Interesting.
Yeah, those are really, really great points. I think it points out to conversion rate is not as simple as we think it is. We just think, oh, well, conversion rate is everything, right? And then you don't factor in the traffic source and the, I see a little bit further down the list, the buyer quality. We don't think about the intent to buy, which really is, we look at page interactions that made up what was used to be called the popularity score. If you remember way back in the day, they actually displayed this popularity score. And it was a way of throwing all these things together in a weighting system. And as Anthony alluded to, we could always see add to cart was very high on there. And being also able to see that it also confirmed, as we would sort of expect, that it was relative to the competition. And so when we think about this from a macro view, it really is, from my perspective, that if conversion rate is often overstated and we don't think about the entirety of the other things that we can do for page or user interactions, that's really where, and again, we do this practically with tools like ManyChat, but if you can encourage a very unique customer experience in a diverse way, so we may ask of one thing of one customer, another thing of another, and then they're coming from one source and coming from another, kind of bring that back full circle to my prior point. You can see how this is exactly what Amazon wants. Interest from a variety of points, from a variety of customers that are hopefully high quality, that are showing strong buyer intent for a specific keyword. And then I agree with Anthony. It's like, they don't have to cross the finish line, but if they're kind of just dancing around it, Amazon's sort of saying, okay, there's assumed relevancy here. There's the potential for revenue generation, and we're going to reward that ASIN and product and give it greater rank. We're not going to put everything on conversion rate. We're going to say, we kind of like when people spend a lot of time on our platform because maybe they're playing the longer game. If I'm going to spend more time viewing a detail page or a variety of detail pages, I might transact larger over the week versus just that one transaction over the day. So that's really where it's both simple and complex, right? This is the fun of constantly doing all the research that Anthony does. Is it's both things, but if we zoom out, parts of it make a lot of sense.
Here's a fun little experiment people can try, actually, because a lot of people make kind of the argument, they're like, sales, that's the biggest driver, but let me show you something really cool that all of you can do. Go to Amazon and look up diamond necklace. What you're going to see is most of the first page is a bunch of $500 to $700 diamond necklaces. And then all the way down to the bottom, if you run a tool to kind of estimate sales, you'll see that the number one seller is the cubic zirconium necklace. The cubic zirconium necklace is the number one seller because it's $11. It sells more units and it sells more in total revenue generated for that keyword on page one than all of the other ones. Yet it doesn't rank the highest. Why is that? Well, it's because the sale isn't necessarily the thing that tells Amazon what is relevant to diamond necklace or actual diamond necklaces. And that's what everybody expects. Not only do they expect that, but Amazon knows that if they flood the first page with cubic zirconium necklaces that will all get higher sales, it'll start making the website look cheaper. People will look at it and literally be like, I don't want to shop here anymore because they don't sell real stuff. So it's like, there's just so many factors. And micro conversions, page activity, filling up baskets, customer sentiment, how often the same customer profile goes and visits certain categories. That's where the hunger score comes in. That's a thing for like figuring out which category is the most relevant from a search on the homepage. Like, it's so integrated and it's so complex, and it all plays into it, which is why for sellers, our like highest ROI activities has always been obviously step one, have a phenomenal product with a great customer experience. And then outside of that, when you're actually running like promotions and stuff, diverse traffic. And then when you're going to run things like rebates, trying to just bring in traffic from as many places as possible, because what looks good and normal and right to Amazon is normal people coming in from all kinds of inputs, walking around, looking down the aisles, putting stuff in their cart, leaving it there till tomorrow because they forgot, they got to go do something, coming back and maybe put this one back and go look at this other one. Like, anyway, that was a soapbox, but there you go.
I think that's an awesome summary of a lot of these points, though. That's really where you have to, because I mean, you could go down the click-through rate, rabbit hole and really try to pull these things out. But these are all intermeshed. Amazon looks at all of these things together, and there's a little bit of a weighting, but like it's the tapestry of it. It's not really just one thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I read an interesting article, I think it was about maybe a year and a half ago, where I think Amazon got, anyways, they were in the US Congress because they were essentially being, I don't know if it was reported, but essentially they were, what would you say, accused of ranking their products higher than other people's products, right? Other listings that they were competing with. And essentially they had to go to the Congress to make sure they're not a monopoly, so on. And one of the things that their top executives said is that they have 100 different signals that determines where products end up. So obviously you can see that we don't have 100 things here.
That was a little misleading. What he's actually referring to is in the published paper, The Joy of Ranking, which there was a YouTube video made. The person that wrote, the scientist that wrote that paper actually present and kind of try to dumb it down in layman's terms. Danny McMillan has written on this one. It's really, really good. But basically, the relevancy algorithm actually looks at 150. They're called features, which are, I guess, would be another word for these signals. But it's then pared down to only 20 in any given instance. So your list is actually probably accurate for a lot of them.
Okay, fair enough. So obviously, anyways, there's a lot of things they're looking at, and they're probably looking at aggregate of things, right? They're not just looking at one thing and this is the most important thing. It's kind of like the car analogy where like all four wheels are important. You can't just remove one and say, oh, well, you know what? It'll still drive. Okay, I don't know if I want to go into an immense amount of detail on all of these guys, because I know that we are running a little late, like more than normal. What do you think, Troy? Do you want to cut into this really quickly, or
no? I think we can go through. If there's questions, I'd love to, for those that are joining us live, let us know if you maybe want to do a deeper dive. We can do more dedicated content, but I think for the last 10 minutes we have, let's see if we can kind of wrap everything up, because I think we're giving it still a good overall picture of how to think about Amazon SEO.
Okay. So yeah, maybe that's what we'll do is we'll make an FBA Kings post after this call, and then you guys can post your questions. Obviously, if we didn't answer here, we're sorry, but I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't anticipating this to be like as long as it is. I thought it was going to be roughly an hour, maybe an hour and 20 minutes, but yeah, this is way longer than I thought. So they're looking at things like average order value. So this is really kind of Anthony said it, where, you know, coupons used to work like gangbusters, where you would just do 99% off or 95 or 100% off, whatever it was. And that was directly tied to kind of your conversion rate, your add to carts, you know, whatever kind of metric you want to put there. And it just immediately gave that customer what they were looking for. But now Amazon does not do that, where they actually tie it to what a value, a dollar value that they're getting out of the customer. So same with that diamond necklace. Is like, it may not be outselling the little, you know, $11 diamond necklace, but the other one that's selling for $700, it may convert significantly less like sales, but it has a very high order value. And you can see this on many different SERP pages, where there are certain premium products that'll still be at the top, even though they may not have nearly as many sales as some of the lower ticket items. And I believe that this is one of the metrics they look at, is like kind of that dollar value. Is it
Point of
still?
contention, I don't think I agree with that entirely.
Oh.
I feel like average order value could be an indicator of something that's looked at, but I don't know that that's the pure value. I can tell you right now, the reason that the diamond necklaces rank better isn't because of what they're priced at, but because they fall into the exact. So I'm going to write about this, right? So stay tuned. But there are 4 basic buckets that every keyword, as far as relevance is concerned, every product fits into with regard to the keyword: exact, substitute, complement, and irrelevant, right? The cubic zirconia necklace would be considered a substitute. For that reason, it does not rank on the highest relevance factor, which is exact. That's the reason why it's outranked. I don't think it has to do with average order value. And the reason why is because what does price actually tell you about relevance? Like, it might be an indicator. It's one of those things, like if you saw Yev Mirishenko's latest scatter plot, you know, he was talking about how price was this factor that kept coming up with regard to rank. But, you know, a bunch of us dove into that conversation. It's like, that's one of those indicators that Amazon is like, the data is telling you something's here, but what that means is there's more to it than that. The price itself, like, we all, like, the general consensus, everybody agreed, like, no, that clearly isn't the actual indicator. What that's telling us is we're tracking it as a data point because there's something there. We just don't know what those factors are. I think that has more to do with customer sentiment. I think that has more to do with buyer activity and the psychology behind, like, what actions they're taking that the price triggers than the actual price itself.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, there you go. You blew my mind. Okay, fair enough. So I guess the next thing, I'm not gonna, you know, go on a live debate here, even though maybe there is a room for it, maybe in a different conversation. But the next thing they're kind of looking at is sessions, right? How many sessions you're getting, the amount of added carts you're getting, your click-through rate based on other products, right? So if you have a higher click-through rate, chances are you might climb up a little bit. The amount of impressions you get, right? So again, click-through is kind of relevant to, you know, your impressions. Then your average time on detail page, right? So people that spend more time, you know, and show some type of buyer intent, obviously that's much better than just a listing that's like, I don't know, 30 seconds and they click off, compared to somebody that maybe spends 5 minutes and they scroll around. It just shows a little bit more buyer intent when they're on the page a little longer. And then social sharing. So there's little buttons where you can actually share on social media. That just, again, shows more buyer intent, showing that, like, hey, you know, look at this product, kind of thing. And then the buyer score. I think this one right here is something that's really, really underutilized, is the actual score the customer has. And Amazon does, I remember seeing one screenshot of it where they actually show your seller account and then your buyer account, and they have like kind of a little bit of kind of a rating system there. And essentially, from my understanding, and this is a very basic understanding, is that certain customers are kind of deal seekers in terms of them. So they're not the most quality leads. And then there are other, you know, more quality leads where they would consider them more real customers. And those real customers have more impact on kind of the browse history, or on the browse experience, than the users that are deal seekers.
100%. I saw this. This was another chart that was given, like, through all, you know, the leaked documents and everything. Buyer score, like, they look at things like valid credit card, right? Because right off the bat, they can tell that somebody might be trying. They're also looking out for the sellers, believe it or not. They don't want scammers. So they're looking at, do you have a valid way to pay for these products? They're looking at how many times you return products. Like, are you notorious? So that's why they started kicking buyers off of the platform. If you turn around and try to get a refund for everything without returning stuff, they look at, how many good interactions they've had, but they also look at how much you actually use the platform for its intended purpose, which is to find products that you need and buy them. And if every product is 99% off with a coupon, they absolutely track that. And that drives the score down because they know that you're probably part of this mass of real or fake, it doesn't matter, accounts that are specifically intending to manipulate the search and browse experience for buyers rather than genuinely interact with the platform. So yeah, like that's why they have a buyer score, so that they can distinguish people who use the platform for what it was intended to. And it's really cool to kind of see that like broken out on a chart, and see all the things that are kind of factors for it.
Yeah, and I have to share my shameless plug, but I did drop it in the Zoom chat. We have a feature where I think it may be the first and only time that a tool has attempted to provide this level of insight, where that fingerprint that we know that Amazon tracks, we're sort of mirroring that, where if we can see the customer purchase activity, we can look at two things. We look at a high confidence metric for that customer and their phone number. We make sure they have a real phone number. Is it authentic? Is it a virtual number? Does it make regular calls, regular texts? We integrate with a telecom provider to give that level of certainty to our users to sort of know, hey, this is a real person, because it's not somebody who's trying to just take advantage of deals. Then we look at buyer and purchase activity to arrive at the same thing that Anthony's outlining is, does this somebody truly look like a valued customer to Amazon in terms of regular purchase activity, cancellation, refund rates, promotional purchases across seller accounts? So this will be across a number of buyer accounts, not just your own. But that level of insight will let you know when you use the customer list feature as a CRM, well, maybe you want to just focus on the highest quality customers you can find, not only just excluding the worst, but focusing on just the best, and then telling Amazon, giving them the right signals. Because, a hypothesis that we have is that when you see these review wipes, review suppressions, this fingerprinting is still involved with those individual customers. The accounts that those customers are associating or buying from, and they can be then adversely impacted. It's like this domino effect that happens when Amazon sees lower quality activity. And so when you have that visibility, as we're wanting to achieve, you can sort of say, hey, let me focus on offers, review requests, engagement with higher quality customer, and promote or focus my promotions on them. And I think, again, as a factor, it's huge.
Awesome. So I could probably stay on this circle for quite a while, and plug in all the kind of mini chat stuff we can do. But we're tight on time. So let's go on to the next one, which is Amazon PPC. So this is kind of in the between of two circles, right? That's why I put it right here. And it's very important because it intersects with your on page and your off page, because your PPC, if you have very, very bad, main image, for example, then that directly affects your PPC performance. Just because customers are less enticed to click on your product because maybe the image isn't good, maybe you have a bad star rating, maybe the price is too high. I don't know. There's a lot of factors there. So we're just going to cover kind of the type of Amazon PPC kind of ads we could do. So there are kind of four ad sets that I know of, and I'm sure maybe at some point they'll add more, but these are kind of the ones that are out there. So there's the search ads. So these just come up whenever you type in a keyword, and they just come up on the SERP page, which is the search engine result page. Sometimes they're at the start, sometimes they're midway through the SERP page, or they're at the very tail end. And then there's video ads. And again, these come up through search ads as well, where you can see a video. I want to say it's not above the fold, but it's just one or two scrolls above that. So it's like a video, and you see the product doing whatever it's doing, and then the price and title and so on. And then there's product ads. So this shows up on your competitor's detail page. It could also be your own detail page, but normally it's your competitor's detail page. And you're able to kind of show up there as kind of one of those sponsored ads. And then there's the retargeting ads, which is really kind of the new ads that they've come out with, otherwise known as DSP, where you're able to retarget people that have already been on your listing on other platforms. So Amazon owns like a slur of just all these other kind of websites, such as like Twitch. I don't know any on hand. I know they own like Alexa. They got quite a bit of other ones, but they're able to.
IMBD, Washington Post, like there's just so many media channels that they own.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyways, they're
What,
able
and
sorry.
well, I just know we're running up on time. I want to make sure we're respectful of Anthony's time. So maybe and this is a good topic though to let maybe we can wrap up on, Anthony, of what you have in terms of treatment of Amazon PPC, but more specifically with on-page, off-page. Retargeting, DSP. I think this is a topic in and of itself.
Yes, this is actually one that we try to touch on pretty regularly at Canopy. Canopy Management offers PPC management, specifically though DSP management, which is like the thing that I think anybody at a certain revenue level should absolutely be experimenting with at very least, because there's so much you could do, not just with off-channel stuff, but even within Amazon stuff like OTT. Like think about you having an ad on Prime TV, like holy crap, or a banner ad above the Washington Post freaking online. Like these are placements that are incredible, and not just even DSP, but sponsored brand is also opening up a whole bunch of really cool things. I think one of them is the retargeting and stuff. That's pretty fantastic. Retargeting, by the way, across the board is one of the biggest bangs for your buck. It's freaking amazing. And then we also offer optimization services. So Steve is the guy that runs that, and he's probably one of the most knowledgeable people that I know with regard to he'll like straight up interview you and be like, I want to know everything about your brand, and then all of the copy. Now, obviously you still want to use tools like seller tools to get the keywords right? You want to have a competitive landscape idea, but then you go to somebody like Steve and he'll just wordsmith the crap out of this stuff to make it sound authentically from your brand. And then the imagery that the team can create, and this includes video, it's beautiful. So there's the reason why we work so well with seller tools is because they are a wonderful software solution to get you kind of all of the knowledge on the data that you need. And then a service like Canopy is the human element that implements that for you from really, really experienced individuals.
Yeah. Okay. And I would say for the potential of DSP, because I think there's a rightful amount of intimidation, because there's so much that you can do with it, that get a pro in your corner working with Canopy, have somebody who's a subject matter expert, because there's so much that you can do with so many different ad types and targeting and channels. And it is a lot that is possible with it. But if you can tap into it, there's real potential you can capture there for sure.
Yeah, this is like an hour conversation all on its own, maybe even longer. Do you guys want me to just go over the kind of the solution slides, or because I know the time, I'm not sure exactly how we.
I'm 3 minutes late to my previous engagement. So
okay, let's wrap it up.
Got to hop on.
Let's wrap it up. Yep. Well, cool. Well, I just want to say thank you very much, Anthony, for joining us and all of your expertise and insights. This is years and years of your research, education, work coming together for Amazon SEO. So I don't want to understate how much you bring just by spending all of that time within the documents, running the case studies, examples. So really appreciate you and Tyler putting together both the visuals. I think these are really great visuals to share and really break down some of these key sections. And hopefully we shared enough in terms of some takeaways of thinking about, okay, I dropped in the chat as well, running LQS on your listing, seeing if it's truly optimized, doing good keyword research, thinking about external traffic, the page interactions that, Anthony detailed, and how you can think about those. So just really taking these insights and then having an action orientation to really implement.
I can see him he's like a kid, I gotta go to the bathroom. That's what you look like. Okay, Anthony, I really do appreciate you coming here, and I guess we'll probably talk again.
Yeah, that was a fun conversation. Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome. Super fun you guys are big brains in the space too, though. So it's great that riff back and forth, because it's you guys have seen some crazy stuff. I've seen some crazy stuff. We just come in together and we're just like, wow, that's crazy. And it's really fun.
Hmm.
So
It is
hopefully
fun.
everybody else enjoyed it.
It is fun.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that. If in the chat you enjoyed joining us live, definitely let us know. And Anthony will definitely let you hop off if you need to go. We appreciate you being on today and
Mhm.
staying long and all the insights. Really appreciate it. Check him out again at Canopy Management. Thank you again, Anthony.
Yes. Canopy Management. Come to the website, look at all of our offerings.
Hey.
Really quick though, social media at Anthony Lee 991, like literally across the board. One of the things that I wanted to offer everybody, since we're talking about SEO and stuff, like this is really cool for content for me. If you guys decide that you're okay with being public with your listing and you want a listing audit, reach out to me and I'll do a TikTok video. And with 59 seconds, I'll tell you all that I can about your listing. And it's fun because, you know, content for everybody, and then it might help out too. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Awesome.
Yeah, that definitely.
Would highly encourage taking part in that.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, Anthony.
All right. Peace,
Appreciate it. All right, Tyler. I think this was great. Obviously, we went, hopefully the quality was there. Everybody enjoyed spending the time with us. We know we went long on time. So really appreciate everybody who did join us live. This is obviously a topic we very, very much care about because we can talk about it for a long time.
Mhm.
But I'm going to encourage you again, get full access to the Solo Tools Chrome extension. You can find the link in the Zoom chat or just simply search Solo Tools Chrome extension. You'll be able to find us through that. It's a totally free tool. As well as signing up for free for Seller.tools. Don't miss out on getting access to whether it's brand analytics, as we touched on. If you're looking for an edge, some superior data there, how to approach keyword research, definitely do that. But I think, Tyler, that covers it, man. We'll have to plan another time, I think, to dive even more into this. And I like Anthony said it. Maybe an AMA would be a great way to kind of just get some questions in, see if we can dive into some specifics.
So would you say that's for next week or kind of what are your
We'll have to see.
plan?
We'll have to see.
Okay.
We'll be able to confirm. He's trying to get me to promise something, but of course we've got to build up and share with everybody, make sure everybody joins. So,
okay.
But yeah,
Sense.
more to come there. Keep an eye out, whether it's through our emails or FBA Kings. We'll make sure everybody knows.
Sounds good. And just kind of before we do leave, I think, do we want to put the slides as something that people can access through the Google document? So that way that if they want to access the slides, they can. Because we didn't go through all of them, obviously, here.
Sure.
Okay, so there will be a, let me just quickly go over the kind of resource. I had a lot planned out. Sorry, guys, we weren't able to go through this. I actually was not anticipating it taking this long. But again, the two kind of websites right here in the resource section and the Google document, guys. So I'm gonna, let me just exit on the full screen here. I'm gonna put this inside the chat, and you guys can actually check out all of the past webinars that we've held for kind of, it's mainly for ManyChat stuff and regarding on rebate giveaways. But we'll also have the link to this recording as well as all the Google slides. So you can of course take a look at the ones that you may not have seen right now, just because again, we tight on time. Again, I was not anticipating this, and my apologies for not thinking with, I really didn't, I couldn't have anticipated that we were here for 2 hours and we couldn't cover it. But yeah, I do appreciate everybody coming in and taking a look at this, and hopefully you guys got some value. Yeah,
absolutely. Bring the conversation over to FBA Kings, our Facebook group. Reach out to us at hello@solo.tools. Again, got free access to our tools, a Chrome extension, but we'll definitely have more. I think this was great, and we'll make sure to let everybody know well in advance before we catch up again. And we promise we'll be on time. Make sure we're respectful of everybody's time. But thank you again for everybody who did join us live.
okay. All right, guys. Later. Take it easy.
Bye.
There's always that awkward, like, I gotta click the button. Why can't I click it?